All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Products Account webinar. Today's session is a must for product leaders and builders who are navigating one of the most complex and I'll say high stakes challenges in today's market, which is how do you go to market with AI native products? In this session, we're going to dive deep into what's really required to commercialize AI, from packaging and pricing to even how to augment your sales and go-to-market processes with AI. But before we jump into today's conversation, I want to share a few quick highlights about Products That Count community, which really make it such a valuable space for product professionals. So first and foremost, there's over 500,000 product managers reached by this community. This is truly one of the largest and most influential product manager communities globally. Expert resources. There are expert resources from C-suite VP level folks to really thought-provoking articles and video content. Our library is really built to support product leaders and product builders at every stage of their career. So whether you're looking to sharpen your skills, you want to explore emerging trends, or lead your team more effectively, Products Account really is your go-to destination for information. Now, let me introduce myself. My name is Denise Hemke, and I'm honored to be your host for today's session. Outside of my role as the San Francisco chapter lead with Products Account, I'm the Chief Product Officer at NeoGov, where we deliver purpose-built HR and public safety software for government agencies. I'm thrilled today to welcome our guest speaker, Su Belagodu, a seasoned product strategist, builder, founder, and early stage startup advisor with deep experience in commercializing AI first platforms. So Su brings a wealth of experience in aligning product roadmaps with investment strategies, identifying high potential markets, and really implementing products. In fact, she has launched a staggering number of startups, over 15, that have gone from 0 to 2 million in revenue, and was the co-founder of ContextQA, an AI native product aimed at solving quality assurance needs on your team, leveraging AI to do just that, what people are doing today. So in today's conversation, Su's going to share some hard-earned lessons from the field and launching AI products. You'll walk through with some candid, actionable insights and really some things that you can put to work in developing your AI go-to-market strategy tomorrow. So before we dive in, a quick housekeeping note. The first half of today's session is really going to be, Su sharing all this incredible content with you. And in the back half, we're going to have live Q&A. So please stay for the live Q&A. It's incredibly valuable. But feel free to drop in your questions throughout the session into the Q&A section of the Zoom. If you don't know where that is, or it's not popping up right away, it might be hiding under that ... more menu. So click on that there, drop in your questions, and I'll be fielding those in the back half of the session. So with that, let's get started. Take it away, Su.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you guys for showing up. Just a quick note is that I cannot see you all, so I apologize, but I know you're there, and thank you for showing up. I see a couple people that I know, so hello, thanks for joining the webinar, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. As Denise said, I wanted to share some stories from my own experience of working in AI and helping launch a few startups. I came with over 18 years of experience with SaaS digital products. And so when I started advising AI companies, I thought, oh, you know what? Yeah, we got this. And no, we did not get it because it was a whole different beast. So throughout the slides and even after, I'm sharing my perspective of what it took us, how we did it, what were some of the common misconceptions we had that AI completely shattered, and then what we did about that. I'm really excited to be here. And so without further ado, let me share my screen and get started here. All right. So I'm going to minimize this window here so we have more screen time. All right. So what did it take to launch AI product, and what does it take to launch AI native products? I know Denise did an amazing job in introducing me, but I wanted to share a little bit more because, there are different hats that I wear, and we all have different layers to who we are. And in the current day and time, where the best relationship you can have is with yourself, I figured the relationship model to describe myself would be ideal. I'm a health equity advisor. I advise health equity firms on growth strategies. I'm an eternal student, and that's the biggest bubble because I'm constantly learning. And through communities like Products That Count, where we get access to a lot of information, and too many things are changing really fast. So trying to catch up, read, learn, and grow. And I think Denise covered the rest, so I'm not going to go through all of these. I love writing about AI and product, and I right now use LinkedIn as my platform and the Forbes Tech Council. So check it out if you have the time. So before we get started, I wanted to get a sense of what you all think. How long does an average AI native startup survive after seed funding? We all know that AI startups raised a lot of seed money in 2024. It was in the billions. How long do you think an AI native startup can survive? Take your best guess, put your answers in the chat, which I'm realizing I cannot see. So Denise, I can see. Take a wild guess, guys. Is how many A, B, C's, or D's? Yeah, I see. I have a couple A's and a B and a C, just pretty interesting. And a B. So we have the whole spectrum there. But I see we have very realistic audience today. So the right answer was all of your guesses, or B to be precise. A staggering 65% don't make it past the 24 months. And what that means is there is no problem in raising the funds. There's definitely a problem with growth. How are you going to take those funds and then grow the company, hit that 1 million ARR, and grow from there? So that's the struggle that most AI companies have. Now, really quick, the second question: which illusion trips up AI founders most? Demo, we're doing a lot of demos, so we're getting a lot of traction. We have a successful pilot, so we're scaling. We have funding, which means we have an awesome product. There's a lot of virality and hype, so we have a protective moat. Which illusion trips up most AI founders? I'm curious what you guys think. Okay. Yeah, absolutely, Chandru. I think funding is definitely one of the things that makes people feel like they have the product or product market fit. Ian also says B. Yeah, that's an interesting one. P Reddy, I see you said D, but I'm not sure if it's for the previous one or for this one. You'll be surprised with this one, and I was as well. They're all right. These are all the illusion trips you go on as an AI founder, because there have been boatload of companies that each of these illusion has shattered or tanked in the past few years. And we'll talk a little bit about why, right? Like, what do they reveal? That most AI founders face trust and traction challenges. Yeah. These kinds of illusions about virality and, we have funding, these drive early missteps because very soon in the process, you're starting to think that, yes, I got it. Now I just have to sell this more. May not just be that. And though AI is this hype word and everybody wants to be in that field, there is still deep trust issues, lack of clarity when it comes to AI products. So let's talk a little bit about all of these. Coming specifically to an AI native product and specifically my experience with the companies that I'm working with and my own company that I was part of last year, there were three categories of challenges that we faced: the cost dilemma, customer skepticism, and there were no established patterns. I alluded to the no established patterns at the beginning of the call. When I got into the AI, product development and the founder mode, we felt very confident because we were all coming with experience in SaaS, and very soon realized that all of the business models that were established for SaaS were failing for AI. Name it, like subscription models, PLG model. There wasn't one single success criteria for AI. And that really threw us off at the beginning. When I say customer skepticism, I don't want us to confuse it to curious or willing to try out kind of customers. There's a lot of interest in trying out AI native products, but then once it comes to a sustainable way of them having to pay for those services, the number of questions you get is innumerable. From, are the models mature enough? What's the efficacy rate? Are there false positives? There's data breach issues. So there's a lot of customer skepticism. And the cost dilemma at the end of the day, the infrastructure costs, which have substantially gone down in 2024 and 2025, but at the beginning of 2024 was still very high. It's still a problem even to this day. So this would mean that we have to price AI products really high, but at the same time, you have to make them look really simple. So potential customers land up feeling duped or cheated because they're like, why would we pay something when we have ChatGPT for free? Or, we can do this with the free version. Why do we have to pay? So there is definitely an problem around communicating value and how to accurately price your product. So these were like the top three challenges we faced when we wanted to take our product to market. So the first thing that my co-founder and I tackled was customer skepticism, because not just was this a barrier for us to break into the market, it was also very expensive and time consuming, because we would get a lot of sales calls, we would get on those calls, but the same questions over and over again, and then not leading to a sale was really costing us a lot more than just our time. And what we realized through all of those sales calls was that AI was still like a black box for a lot of potential customers. They understand how ChatGPT works, good for, how OpenAI's marketing team actually use these mini stories to demonstrate how you can use it. So people understand that, but they still don't understand what happens behind the scene and probably don't care. But if you are a startup and you are in your, seed stage, pre-seed stage, you don't get the same kind of confidence from the customers or potential customers that OpenAI did. So there is this inherent belief that what you're doing is a black box. So we want to truly understand if there's AI. Are you really using AI? So what's happening? So the way we went about doing that was transparency in product packaging. And, you guys can read what I've said there, and hopefully you'll get the slides after this as well. We were very clear in communicating where AI was being used and where it was not being used, and how we were pricing these features differently. And we were very clear about that. I think one of the ways we did that at the very beginning, I remember, you know, how we have these different packages and tiers and subscription models. One of the things we were talking about was, can we price it based on the amount of AI that we use in each package? So it went with minimal use of AI, 50% AI, 50% rules-based engines, or fully autonomous using the AI model for all their needs and all of the features. So we tried to package it that way and really explain what someone was getting if they chose a specific package. So there was no surprises later. So they knew what they were buying into. And that really helps establish that trust and confidence, because they could see that we were being very open about even the model and the model's efficacy. So if they were going to pay higher, we were going to use maybe a better model in the behind the scenes, and so on and so forth. And people actually appreciated that. They appreciated the transparency. And of course, evidence-based validation, right? We worked with design partners early on. I highly recommend that you do that. And the outcome of those land up becoming case studies and metrics that you can use in your sales process. And so that was really, really helpful for kind of countering that initial skepticism. And if you land up getting partnerships with some well-known companies, you'll be surprised how many of them are willing to do that. If you do land up getting that, that's even better. But any design partner, show them the proof, show them case studies, show them how you did it, how it fails. Like, even if there was ones where we had a design partner 6 months ago, and that sales call that I was on was 6 months after. And so I could clearly use the example of that case study and explain how the output looked then and what the efficacy was at that point, and how even in those 6 months we had evolved from where we were. And that was a really good conversation, because they could see that in those 6 months, we had really improved the product. And that was a good conversation to have with a potential customer. And addressing these trust barriers. Well, I say decision makers require concrete explanations, but the hard part was figuring out who the decision makers were. Everybody was curious about using an AI product or introducing AI in their companies, that right from the C-suite to, say, a QA team member would land up asking for free trials and asking for free licenses because they wanted to test the product out. And so really arriving at that ideal customer profile and ideal buyer profile was a big challenge. And so we really needed to understand, how can we create collateral that can answer all of these questions and help build trust in a way that it wasn't very time consuming, and use our instincts to understand who the real decision makers were and double down on that, right? In one instance, the decision maker was C-suite, and their motive was very different. They did want to save money. And so they were like, okay, how many junior engineers do we not have to hire if we bring on this product? But at the same time, they would make that decision, but then the final call would be someone from the QA team who would have to approve. And they wouldn't, because they were too scared that it would cost their job. So we had to build our sales pitch, build our demos, and have a narrative that would make that C-suite person happy, but also convince the team members that their jobs weren't at risk and this was only going to increase their productivity. So went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but addressing trust barriers starts with, talking to them about who is going to benefit from it and how, and, have different demos for different people and customize it. I see some messages pop up, Denise. I don't know if you want us to take questions now or at the end. I want to pause and see if people are following through so far.
No, we'll hold them for the end.
Okay, great. All right, moving on then. So once we went through that whole customer skepticism, we came up with ways to handle that. The second thing we had to take care of was pricing and packaging. Disclaimer, I haven't spoken about how we fully cracked it in this slide, but I'll talk to you through how we thought about it and what were some of the things. So the first and foremost was, let's try what we'd already tried, per seat, per user kind of pricing. And I remember having this conversation internally where they said, hey, the unit economics do not make sense. And do you know why? And nobody knew why, because the cost of acquisition, customer acquisition, was very low, but we were still, if you look at a 6-month pattern, we weren't still making the kind of margin we should have made, which is when we quickly realized that the cost to serve was super high. And so be very clear in understanding what the cost to acquire is, cost to serve your customer is, because cost to serving a customer in an AI native product is very high, going back to that infrastructure costs that I spoke about early on. Usage-based concerns. So we try to introduce usage-based pricing. But then, there were so many curious users within this organization that we would try to sell into, that during the trial period, there were huge spikes. And that wasn't a real indication of, how much they would use the product. So it was really hard to price based on that. So we needed a lot more data to be able to see clear patterns. So usage-based pricing also, just usage-based pricing also did not work for us. And the third kind of pricing packaging issue we saw was that, how for all go-to-market motions, we want to get to that first aha moment, right? And we know that's when we've got the customer, they love the product. But what happens with AI native products is that even a little bit of introducing AI in their existing workplace would increase productivity by a little. And at first you believe that's the aha moment, but then that's the for aha moment, because with every corresponding hit that they would do against your product, they expected the outcome to be that much better. And so the first time, say for example, I'll take an example. For us, it was the first time they tried to automate a test case using plain English to write the requirements. And they were really impressed, but that was not it. And that was not our aha moment. And if you guys, if you come from a product background, you understand how important it is to really crack that, because when you're designing a PLG motion, you really need to know what is that leverage. So that was unclear at the beginning. You really need to understand what is adding value to these customers. And it's not the first time they try out your product and see how AI works. That was actually detrimental. So I'll go a little bit into some of the strategies that worked, and frankly, ones that somewhat worked, because let's be honest, I don't think any, that's a bold claim, but I don't think most of the AI native startups that are not backed by big companies have really cracked this yet. This is still evolving. People are still figuring out how to do this. So let's go through some of the motions that we tried. first we went broad, right? So free tiers and full transparency. We will tell you, you can try three times, you can try for free, and then after that it'll start charging you, right? So you build trust through bringing them all in. All of the marketing efforts we had, it was really easy, low barrier to get people in, right? But we were using all of the funding that we had for marketing and sales to bring people in, but the level of conversion was super low. One, I already spoke about this. People were happy with the free version. They did not want to update to a paid version. So what do you do then, right? So that wasn't it. That was really good to bring people in the door, but after that, you had to build something into your product for them to be able to, convert. Then we said, okay, let's move into value-based pricing. And I know this has been doing the rounds, and all of the gurus in go-to-market that you talk to talk about value-based pricing or outcome-based pricing. I think there is definitely something here, because you are now pricing based on the outputs, and not really on how long somebody used it. So it's not that you created 20 test cases, so we'll charge you for that. It was, you created 20 test cases and you caught 5 issues that you would not have caught using a human or your existing processes. So those 5 are value-based output. And so we would charge them for that. That's a really basic example, but that was to help you understand the difference between usage and value-based. With value-based, again, it delayed the aha moment. People were super happy at first, and then every week they expected that this would be substantially better. But this was a catch-22 kind of a situation, because the model would get better with usage. So if they had only assigned 2 people in your team to identify if this is the right product for your company, then if those 2 people didn't use it a lot, they would see that the quality of the output didn't really go up. It would remain the same because they're not continuously using it and feeding the model. So purely value-based also didn't work for mid-sized companies and SMBs. So finally, what kind of started working for us was this hybrid model. So we combined a fixed fee, which took care of our cost to serve, which is like the infrastructure costs. And then it's not always just running against your AI model. We had some other subscriptions under the hood that was helping us create what we were creating. So we packaged all of that as a fixed fee. And companies did love fixed fee because it was more predictable for them. And then we created tiers, which was more, I say usage-based here, but it was value-based. That's a mistake. So that gave companies a level of predictability. And even the fixed fee, we experimented with the first 3 months, the fixed fee was quite low. And then they would we would increase that, and based on how they were using, we would adjust the tiers and all of that. So the first 3 months was like a trial, but they were also trying to understand what their value-based outcome would look like. And then we would recalibrate at the end of 3 months. So these were some of the ways we tried packaging and pricing. Started broad, and then really found that sweet spot that started to work for most of our customers. So we still kept the free tiers, and I'll talk to you about that. That was still good for spreading the word, spreading the goodness of the product and word of mouth, and it was easier for us to reach out to, say, students and small companies, 1 or 2 person company. It was really good for marketing and branding, but not so good for growth. But together, all of these 3 methods were things that we used. So now we've spoken about how do you make sure your potential customers know what you're doing and feel comfortable, and you've convinced them, they trust you. You've met them halfway when it comes to pricing and packaging. You have different ways of pricing it based on what type of people you have, what type of customers you have. And then the next step was the types of sales motion. You'll see there is a theme here where everything started with experimenting all of it. And at the beginning, we did really stop and think, are we being indecisive, or is this truly how it's going? But then after speaking to a lot of other founders, we realized everyone is just testing it out. And it really depends on what clicks for you, a combination of what clicks for you. So definitely use multiple approaches. We tested direct sales via LinkedIn. That worked really well. We did product-led growth. We did not do it really well. The conversion rate was low, as I said. People were super happy with the free version. And that's still something we're learning about. But we did do that. It was really important to bring all that hype we had created and give them something that was easy for people to try. And you really have to crack that piece where they've come into the product, they're trying the product once, they're trying the product after 3 days. Is it getting better? Is it keeping them happy? So all of those were important metrics for us to understand what the user goes through and what should we be improving. But one of the really successful methods or approaches for us was channel partnership. We were able to sit back and think about us as an independent solution, but then what would it be if we were in an ecosystem of solutions, right? So, and who could we partner with so we become stronger? And the channel partnership that we were able to crack landed up becoming a really successful way for companies that are our size, pre-seed, seed, to enter enterprises. And then initially we were going after everybody who expressed interest in bringing AI into their enterprise, right? Or small companies. Everyone said, oh yeah, you know what? In 2025, our planning meeting, we said, we want to introduce AI without really adding more information or context. So at first we entertained everyone who said, we love AI, we think it's the future, we want to try your product out. But then again, there was a lot of noise, and we then narrowed it down to other startups like ourselves who were building in different verticals, who were already familiar with AI, who themselves were building AI. It was an easier sell for us to pitch our product to them because they got it. They understood infrastructure costs, they understood usage-based pricing, and they also understood the value of AI takes time to realize. So that landed up becoming our focus. So go after people who've already convinced and know, more informed and educated. At least early on, you want your early adopters to really embrace you as a product as you are first. And so that's what we did with mid-market. With enterprise, like I said, we used our channel partnerships, and that was really helpful. I don't know if you know how people feel about this on this call, but we were not big fans of doing a free pilot, because when you have an AI native product, there's a lot of effort that takes to help people understand how it works. For example, for us, it was a testing product. Imagine talking to a test lead who understands Selenium and all of that really well, but now you're saying, put in those requirements in plain English, but in a way that the AI model would truly understand it. It's not easy. So we did paid pilots, and we were very clear with them that, this is for our time and resources. And that went really well. And we were able to document these paid pilots as case studies as well. So that landed up becoming a big boost later on when we would approach other companies. So any type of proof point you can get early on with design partners or through channel partnerships, I would say really go for it. I spoke about how our product was ideal because it was an AI native product for other AI products in different verticals, right? Similarly, within the organization as well, my biggest advice, even now when I advise other startups, not the one that I co-founded, other startups as well, is how can we use AI internally to improve what we're doing? So on this slide, I want to talk a little bit about what all we did. First and foremost, there are really good AI-powered go-to-market tools. We used it, and I was completely blown away. They linked into LinkedIn and any other website that you think that is relevant. That's where your potential customers are. I am going to give a shout out to the product. Like, I actually haven't even spoken to them about mentioning them, but there's this product called Ample Market. They were fantastic. Right from their onboarding to the whole onboarding was a 1 hour call, and it completely made sense. So that in itself is a masterclass on how to onboard people. And that product added a lot of value. And I still recommend it to founders that I work with. Check them out. The second thing was onboarding, which is, focus on superior UX. People need to feel like they understand it. So simple, intuitive, and you are trying to communicate really complicated ways your model is working, but in a really simple way. So striking that balance was super important. And we did that through UI UX. So it was onboard them really quickly. And when AI is processing, it was almost like storytelling. So you take them with you while your AI model or agent is computing behind the scenes. So a good UI UX that keeps your customer engaged and at all times tells them what is happening is very important, very critical. So there's that. The last point here is something that we did, and I feel this really helps with enterprises and highly regulated industries like health tech or maybe even finance, is we moved away from founder-led sales. So we bring in an expert salesperson because there's so many unknowns, as you yourself can sense from this presentation. There were so many experiments to conduct. There's so many ways you can do this. It was really important to get someone in-house that was experienced, who could spot those patterns, who could use their intuition, and then really set that process up for you. And that proved to be really a really good move for us to move away from founder-led sales early on. And then the role of advisors and customer feedback. Customer feedback is, if you're in the world of product management, you already know how important that is. But what we realized was really asking them, what value did it add, right? Like I said previously, a couple slides ago, you ran those 20 tests, but it caught these 5 scenarios, which otherwise your testing team would not have caught it, or the other products would not have caught it. Now, that was really valuable to them. Or running something like this for an e-commerce site was very critical, that you catch these issues. And there were a lot of these features that worked for e-commerce that probably did not work for fintech. So it was trying to understand what each industry perceives value as, right? And then really building upon that. So gathering feedback, but very intentional feedback, and very, very specific to that customer and that industry. We also had advisors, And I also work with startup as an advisor. And when you do that, you're not caught up in the day-to-day grind. Rather, you're always looking at how can you sell this product to your customer in the most cost-effective way with high margins. So get that outside perspective. That proved really valuable to us. And then iterating rapidly. There used to be, and this would require a fantastic team and all of the other AI development tools that are out there. We use them all. And it really mattered. So if a customer came up with a request or they noticed something that wasn't so great, we were able to turn it around really quickly. I don't think, like, having worked in the industry for so many years, watching engineering and technical teams turn things around now, I have never seen them work this fast before. Um, and, kudos to them. They finally have the tools that they need to be able to do this. So iterate rapidly, that goes without saying, but now rapidly truly is rapid. So to answer the question that we had at the very beginning, so what does it take to launch an AI product? Well, in my words, it's the ability to instinctively sync with change, right? There's always going to be different ways these customers are going to use your product, and you're not going to crack product market fit anytime soon if you're early on in your journey. So be patient, instinctively look at what kind of changes are coming your way, and rapidly adapt. Like, that's the only way I've been able to have companies grow and really hit that, first million ARR. Yeah. So that's the end of my slides. I'd love to go back and see what questions we have, and I'll stop sharing for now and happy to reshare.
No, Sue, I love that, like the ability to, I think you said instinctively sync with change. Even when you hear these amazing stories about these AI products that are really taking off in this rapid period of time, oftentimes you talk to the founder, it's like they'd actually been working on something, an open source project, or they'd pivoted a couple of times prior to it. And so to your point, like product market fit right out of the gate is highly
Yeah.
unlikely. You better be ready to pivot.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was for us as well, even with ContextQA and the other startup that I was working with, Clarify. We started in one place thinking we are catering to one set of audience, and then we had to shift left because there was a lot more relevance there and there was a better product market fit. And this is after doing 6 to 8 months of development and whatnot. So being able to be that nimble, read the market and shift is super important.
Yeah, it's also, I think, why the other tools that you talked about in terms of like, how can I, make my go-to-market team more efficient, like helps you operate more leanly so that you can stretch that money that you have out as long as possible. So you've got time to make those pivots.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of those things, like the market signs, even if we couldn't catch it, even with our experience and whatnot, like the AI product that we used for generating leads caught some things that we had missed. And it was like, oh, awesome. Here we are preaching about using AI. And then we should have listened to those products that were doing really well. So yeah, but it was good. It was good. We got a lot of good out of it.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Well, let me jump into some questions that we have here.
Mhm.
So, first one, was the channel adoption for your AI product driven by customer pull or by company push? How did you define that ideal partner profile for early adoption?
Yeah, great question. For us, it came from understanding our customers better, right? So there was an AI testing tool, and clearly our thinking was, so it fits into the technology teams and they would be using it, but what else are they using and how would we package it? And so for us, the channel partners landed up becoming the managed services companies, because managed services companies have established relationships with a lot of really big companies. And some of their deals are multi-million-dollar deals, but the QA budget is one-fourth the whole number, right? And they do not get huge margins in QA is what we landed up recognizing. And so we struck those partnerships and we were able to help them increase their margins, and it helped us enter enterprise. So it was I think it was keenly understanding what our customers need, and not just one of their needs, but what else do they need, the adjacent needs, and who's servicing them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that that's really smart. Because to your point, if they can get so much more capacity and then therefore have a higher quality delivery,
Yeah,
their capacity might be coming in the form of AI,
yeah,
right? But
yeah.
that allows them to be much more margin efficient. Like that's a huge win.
Yeah, and with channel partners like that, it's always land and expand. It'll start with one project and you do that really well, then you're set. Like that was the right one to do multi-year contracts, because you price them by the project, you've already showed them that there's value, and they'll keep coming back to you.
And for, and I think you said this before during the presentation, but how did you get connected in with them? Like if maybe you were somebody who didn't have these native relationships, what would you recommend?
We did not. And so what I recommend is, once you've identified what those adjacent markets are, show up for events for those adjacent markets. So we landed up going to events for managed services businesses, and not ones that were focused on product or testing or quality. We showed up for those as well, but it was more important that we show up for these managed services kind of community gatherings and networking events. That's how we kind of met them. And LinkedIn's a really good tool. I know people short sell LinkedIn, but introductions on LinkedIn go a long way. So yeah, those were some of the ways that we got in touch. And then it spreads word of mouth.
Yeah, yeah. And even if you don't have a connection, you might have a friend who's got a connection. And
Yeah.
so leverage your connections any way you can.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And listen, everybody wants to introduce AI in their enterprise, but they just want to be super careful. And so if you go through a trusted source, then the probability of them giving you the time of the day is high.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Um, Maybe then sticking kind of with this vein of you know, I'm curious, uh, on the go-to-market motions, you and I talked about, PLG, and you said, hey, it wasn't super successful. But we
Mhm.
also talked a little bit about places where it might be successful, right? Again, if you go to these sort of rapid prototyping tools, which are maybe geared for the developer market or arguably the product management or design market, you're seeing a lot of those vibe coding tools kind of take off with PLG. And so I think you had some interesting insights on,
Yeah.
why that might work in those scenarios and why it may work less in a scenario like what you had with Context QA. Can you share a little bit more about why these
Yeah,
different go-to-market
yeah,
models?
yeah, absolutely. So all of the products that you're talking about can work in isolation before it integrates into an existing workflow, right? And a lot of them are really good at building new stuff. So if you're using Replit to build something new, it blows your mind and it's very exciting. And if you're using VO to prototype something, it's amazing how quickly you can go from idea to prototype. But what's the next step after that, right? It's how do you integrate it with what's already there and the amount of effort that it takes to do. But people haven't really uh, I mean, now they are thinking about it, but even at first, when PLG kind of took off for them, people would do this, get excited, but then go back to their traditional ways of doing it. But they would just use this prototype to sell the idea internally and things like that, right? But for companies like ours, where say, if it's a financial product, which is like an analytics product that sits on your entire enterprise, it needs context. It needs to understand your application really well. It needs to understand all of the integrations and the data that's coming in really well for that product to then deliver the kind of value you need. Same thing with the product that we took to market. It was really important that it understands the business context really well, more than what just the user was typing when they were trying it out or testing it out, right? So I think for products that need to blend into and work perfectly well in an enterprise or bigger companies where there are so many interconnected systems, for those kinds of products, I think PLG is hard because there is a level of integration that needs to happen and explainability that needs to happen that is not possible with the PLG. And this is just my sense on why I think products like ours wouldn't PLG wouldn't ideally work.
Yeah, you need that kind of confidence building moment where it's like, I see how this is going to work in my system. And therefore, that requires a white glove service that really only like a sales and an implementation team are going to give you.
Yeah, yeah. And, like I said, for when I tried Replit, I wanted to build a product for I wanted to build something for my kids to use that would like give them math quizzes or something like that. And that didn't need any context about my child more than, hey, he's 10-year-old and blah, blah, blah. He likes Star Wars. So, use the questions in that theme. But when I saw it with our own product, you need that business context and that deeper understanding and all of the integrations that you have under the hood.
I love these mom builders. I have built a chore board for my daughter. So, and
Oh,
it's
nice.
along the journey. I love it. I love it. Maybe pivoting to a different direction. And I know we've got limited time, so maybe we've got time for two or three more questions. So folks who have questions, please get them in the chat. But what's been one of the successful ways to sort of tier AI features without overwhelming the customer about what they're paying for? What have you seen work?
Yeah, this was really hard. The first thing I told the marketing team is stop updating the website pricing page because we are going to be changing that thing often. Um, so jokes aside, what really worked for us was there was this thing which said, what percent of AI are you getting? So if it is 20% AI, 80% existing workflows and, rules-based engine, then that's tier one. So they know they're paying for just 20% of that AI. All of the features they would get would remain the same. But then we would be very clear on, we're going to run this on this model, say DeepSeek, because it was more affordable. So the efficacy rate will only be 60%. False positives could be 10%. So we were very clear in saying, so that's your base model. And then if you increase the amount of AI you want in all of the features and use a superior model for which we have to pay, then that pricing would get rolled in. So that's how we tiered it with how much AI do you want to use with each of these features? As in, do you want to write the test case first and then run it through an AI, which would tell you, hey, have you considered adding this condition and that condition? Or do you just want to say, write me an entire test case with this user story and it generates the whole thing for you? So the level of AI being used and the type of model that we are using behind the scenes to support it. So we kind of broke it down by that.
Got it. No, that's some great advice. I've got a quick hit for you, the go-to-market AI tool that you mentioned. And if there are any other AI favorites you have, this is probably the time to shamelessly plug those too.
Yeah, the one we used was called Ample Market, Ample Market. They're a startup and they're really good. You should check them out. We used AI for everything, especially marketing and sales. I'm sure you guys are now familiar with Gamma, there's Flare. I have a whole list of tools that we used for all of the free AI tools that we used, and I can send them to you, Dennis, if you want to put that in the email or something like that. But
Yeah,
yeah, but that specific product was ample market.
Great. And then maybe the last one, because this might take a little bit, is, how did you coach the sales teams to talk confidently about AI features that maybe they don't fully understand themselves?
You know, the traditional way of telling them what value the customer was getting, we started with that. We started with, this is the problem you're solving for the customer. This is the value they're getting out of it. AI is only going to do this 10 times better and 10 times faster.
Mhm.
So they didn't have to really talk about, we use X model, and so it's 20 times better. They just said, this is the problem you have. So this is how we'll solve it. We'll solve it quickly. We'll solve it. It's going to be cheaper than your current solution. And then, you can scale easily. So those kinds of benefits that doesn't necessarily talk about the technicalities of AI,
Mhm.
but then implies the value that AI brings. Being able to scale up and down was a really big deal, like in quality teams, like QA teams. Imagine if you have a huge project coming, you add 2 new licenses, and when that budget for that project is gone, you can just deactivate that license. You don't have to hire QA people, train them. And then what are you going to do? Repurpose them after that? So that kind of value prop really resonated with them. But I'll tell you, just like all of us, just like how AI PM is becoming a thing and AI engineer is becoming a thing, sales folks are also becoming AI powered salespeople, and they speak the language and they understand it. And so it wasn't really hard. If it was anything technical, we would have an implementation engineer on the call,
Mhm.
but salespeople got it.
Got it. So maybe for that sort of first or second demo meeting, they were probably fine on their own. Only in those cases where they were bringing in that skeptic in the organization, maybe it's the CTO who wants to understand something more, you having to tap into a more technical resource.
Yeah, yeah. And I truly believe sales folks are as good as we can train them to be when it comes to a technical product. So we did have a lot of collateral for them to train on as well. What our product does, what value it's delivering. So they would know that really well.
Amazing, amazing. Well, you've given us so much wisdom today. I'm sure for anybody who's building an AI product, who is taking it to market right now, this will be a must listen session. So just want to say thank you from Products That Count to you, Sue, and really appreciate you coming online today and presenting.
Thank you, Denise. I appreciate you asking me to be on it as well. Thank you. I've loved doing this, putting this together. And thanks to those that showed up and stayed till the end. I hope you take away something.
Yeah, and for everybody else, great to have you listen online later. All right.
Yes.
Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.